Right, hello. It's been a while since I made a Blood Bowl video, but I have not given up on the idea. I've given up on the idea of doing every single one of my matches, but not on the idea of doing Blood Bowl videos in general. Now this, in some ways, might seem like an odd choice of one to make a video of, because on the face of it, if you look at the scoreline, the stats and so on, it doesn't look like it was so much of an interesting game, but that's kind of the point that I want to be making in the course of this video, which is that the scoreline and the stats don't tell the full story. I'll tell you in advance, I win this match. It's a fairly convincing scoreline, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't kind of a close match. I can't remember. There was a definite rationale behind this formation, and it was very specific. But I really can't remember it anymore, because it's been so long since this match. Anyway, the other relevant point is, of course, in the Blood Bowl thread lately, we've had a couple of comments, I think, on the general theme of, like, how the hell do you deal with elves? And one of the things I said is basically that I never feel safe against elves until I have a 2-touchdown lead. And this match is definitely an example of that. As we'll see, which is kind of my point. I win this, I'm kind of ahead and pretty much in control throughout the match, but I never feel like I can relax. I always feel like something could go wrong, and that is in fact the case. I'm not just being paranoid, something could always go wrong. Of all elves, wood elves are the worst because of the power of the war dancer to just jump into... well, it's the leap skill, really. And the block-dodge combo. So the fact that they can get in pretty much anywhere and are then difficult to knock over means they can pull off the craziest of plays, even by elf standards. So, no idea what I was looking at there. Trying to remember about this formation. It's partly like I knew he couldn't outstrength me on the line if I didn't want him to, so I positioned with that in mind. And also I that's an unfortunate start. The Murderhobos have had a certain amount of bad luck in their lifetime, even through to the present day in the Legacy League. And then I think I'm reasonably sure there's nowhere that he can just run an elf through without needing to dodge. And possibly the easiest way for him to get guys through would be on, as I look at it, the right-hand side, but that involves going past Sir Mervyn, who has tackle, which was a deliberate choice on my part to kind of steer him in that direction. And as we are about to see, it worked. So, moving forwards. Yeah. It is Sir Mervyn. And so this is going to allow him to move up the pitch at least a bit. And to be fair, Wood Elves, the catch is a movement 8 sprint. So, in theory, like, if he gets 2 squares into my half, then he can potentially score. He's 3 in, so the potential is definitely there. He could score next turn. I don't think this is a great idea on his part, the fact that he's put his catcher next to my vampire. True, the vampire is on the floor, but it still means I can just stand up and hit his ball carrier. It'll be 2 dice. I think, as I recall, he mentioned afterwards that he didn't notice Sir Mervyn had tackle, which is sort of relevant because it makes it much easier for me to knock over the catcher who has dodge. But I still wouldn't consider it safe. Ooh, yeah, some definite bad luck. I probably would have, like, if I were in his position, I would have wanted to move some other guys, like the 2 guys in the backfield who obviously were intended to retrieve the ball if it hadn't been a touchback. I would have at least brought them up before trying to dodge that guy. Even though, I mean, obviously, you know, elves dodge on a 2+, but I mean, this is why you make references to the curse of the elves, which is that you can never roll a 2 when you need to. And of course, I now am not making the same mistake. I'm making sure, like, even though the stuff I want to do is relatively safe, I'm making sure to do the stuff that is completely safe because it doesn't involve any dice rolls first. Yeah, shoring up the defence around here. This is the thing, actually, with a touchback. You can give the ball to the guy you want to score with. And, oh, okay, here comes the blitz. I'll hold that thought. Haven't knocked him over, but I figure it's worth a reroll. I do have 4 rerolls I can probably manage, and there we go. Catcher is down. Of course, the ball is in 2 tackle zones. That's still not necessarily safe against wood elves, but it's pretty safe. Yes, what I was saying before. On a touchback you can give the ball to the guy you want to score with, but in some ways it's better to still give it to, like, a thrower, one of the guys who would have been retrieving the ball anyway, because then you can run up, like, he could have run multiple people into my half, any of whom could have scored, and I can't hit all of them. Whereas if you give it to the guy you want to score with and run him into the half so that he's in scoring range, well then I only have 1 target. It makes it much simpler. And, like, as we can see, I've kind of clustered my team over there around those guys. Whereas if he'd run in a few and maybe spread them out a bit, I would have had to spread myself a bit more thinly. So I do not remember how he tries to get out of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just tries to pick up the ball, and it's not out of the question. It's the thing, because elves are crazy like that. I mean, that war dancer could score from here on a roll of 4 with a reroll, 4, 3, 2, 2. Which is not likely, but it's not out of the question. This is my point. Elves can do crazy things. no matter how hard you try, it's very difficult to be certain that elves won't score against you. But, obviously... Well, I was going to say obviously he doesn't want to take the big risk, but actually I'm not sure. Maybe he does, but he wants to do other things first. Which is, as I was bringing up before, a good idea. And this... Again, this kind of touches on the other thing I said, which is, now he has another potential scoring threat in a different part of the pitch, so I can't just put my entire team surrounding his guys on the right-hand side, because then he might just throw the ball over. Is he going to move those guys in the backfield? That's the big question here. Of course, also, with Wood Elf movement, forgetting to move a couple of guys is less significant than it would be on some other teams. Yeah, he does go for the risk, but he doesn't make the dodge into 2 tackle zones. So, yeah, this is an interesting situation. Obviously, I want to cover the ball. And I want to move the War Dancer away from it. So Mervyn is kind of unavailable under the circumstances, so I go for Sir Conrad, since he doesn't have tackle, but he has frenzy, and it turns out that he doesn't need it. And so now I've gotten the War Dancer off the ball. He's no longer a scoring threat, I think. Hang on. 2, 4, 6, 7. No, he's still a scoring threat, in theory, but it's unlikely, because he'd need to stand the guy up and run him into the end zone, which would involve a couple going for it, or at least one. I lost count. And then pick up the ball and throw it to him. And of course I'm going to surround the ball. And just form up this cage. Take the block I can get. Yeah, of course, an interesting point, which I don't know if I've touched upon it in these videos before, because it's been so long since I made one I can't remember, is vampires obviously are kind of an all-round team. They can do a bit of everything, whereas some teams are more specialised, like elves are obviously an agility team, things like chaos really a strength team. Vampires are really sort of middle of the road. And that means that when you're up against a more specialised team, you kind of take on the opposite role. So in this game, I will probably be playing more like a strength team, since he is an agility team. And yeah, of course I'm making sure to mark as many guys as possible, because even though he dodges on a 2, it's still good to make him need to roll as many of those 2s as possible, because there's always a 1 in 6 chance that he will screw it up and things will start to go wrong for him. It's the same principle that can be used against me as vampires at this point, because well, not exactly used against me. I have to use it against myself because it's on a. There's always a 1 in 6 chance that a vampire will need to eat a thrall. Yeah, and of course, I'm making sure to keep the war dancers marked. That's always the crucial point. Especially, like, obviously as a team develops, there will be more interesting players that you need to keep an eye on. But this is like, this was week 5, and this was a new team this league, so this is their 5th match ever. They're still pretty much the starting team, and starting Wood Elves, you watch out for the War Dancers. The rest of them, you watch out for them in the same way that you watch out for all elves. They have the agility 4, they can do crazy stuff, they have high movement, and the catchers, obviously, are really good catchers. But the War Dancers are the players that potentially actually scare you. So, yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I kind of would question his decision on offense to leave his ball carrier next to a guy who could just stand up and blitz him. His defense was pretty good. And here is a big problem. He really has had some terrible luck. And now the War Dancer fails a dodge and badly hurts himself. I think in retrospect they've said that maybe he should even have used his apothecary on that. And it's not unreasonable, because, like I said, the War Dancers are the players to be concerned about. Now he only has one of them, where before he had 2. And oh yeah, backtracking a bit, I just realised earlier I said that Conrad had Frenzy, and he doesn't. He got Frenzy later in his life. That aside, moving on. Like I said, his defense is fairly solid. Like, obviously, there's potential. Like, if I can knock one of these guys over, then I can move through to a certain extent with care. But there's no like really easy way to do it. So I have to content myself with just moving up, like, more or less to the middle of the pitch. Yeah, going back again a bit, I have to wonder if he had used his apothecary on that War Dancer and had therefore had 2 War Dancers for subsequent drives. I wonder how the game might have gone differently, because, I mean, obviously, throughout the game I am trying to position myself in such a way as to defend myself reasonably against War Dancers. But there's only so much of that one can do. You can't... So, I mean, it probably wouldn't really have made a difference to how I played, because you can't do, like, if I'm already defending against the War Dancer threat, I can't exactly defend against it more because there are 2 of them. But obviously it would have meant that he would have had two guys who could do that stuff. Now, looking at this, what's striking me is that I'm kind of going against what I said earlier, which is that basically I should be trying to play like a strength team here, because really as a strength team I should be walking my guys up to the enemy and, you know, forcing them to make the dodges because they don't have the favourable blocks. I mean, I suppose I've done that a bit with Sir Mervyn and Gideon on the right side there, and I will probably do it a bit more in future rounds, but I don't know, there's probably more that I could have safely done. On the other hand, I'm going a bit at a time. I'm trying to be safe at all points, and I have the rest of the half to make my way up the pitch and score. Okay, so first point, he has dodged his catcher away. If he can get the ball, he can throw it up there, he can score. And I mean, that may not sound overly likely with the ball in the middle of the cage, but, well, you might be surprised. If you think that sounds unlikely, then you might be surprised. If you think it sounds reasonable, possibly because you have experience of playing Blood Bowl against Wood Elves, then you may not be surprised. And obviously, this is the difference here. Like, he set up a reasonable defense, and I, playing like a strength team, really have to like break a hole in it and slowly advance. Whereas he, if he can get the ball, can just go around any defenses I have and score. Which is why I have to try and be like meticulous in protecting the ball, because like the tiniest opportunity could be enough. This, I think I may have mentioned in other videos, but it bears repeating. Essentially, this can be the difference between the more sort of strengthy team and the more high movement, high agility team, is that you might feel like the strength team, if all things go as expected, sort of should win, because they can just hold on to the ball. Yeah, I'm not expecting to lose the ball here, but I still want to harass the potential receiver. But yeah, the strength team can just hold onto the ball and slowly grind it out. Whereas the agility team needs something to go wrong for the strength team so that they can grab the ball and get an extra touchdown. But the thing is, the chances of things going wrong are reasonable if they just keep harassing at any opportunity. As I said, it doesn't have to be a big thing, which is the difference. Like, I need to, in this defense, I need to smash a big hole in it, potentially to try and shove a cage through. Whereas he can potentially manage on the tiniest of gaps. And so here I go, slowly advancing. I've moved forward 2 whole squares with the ball. The course, also, like, I don't really want to just be keeping all my guys together. I'd rather divide them up and to cover more of the pitch. But I'm like, this is another aspect of his defense. It's stopping me from moving the ball up too far, but it's also actually stopping me from moving guys around to have more like scoring threats. But yeah, okay, so I am, however, as I said before, doing a bit more marking of elves. Including, of course, Jeri there. I've stood... I can't see which Murgatroyd it is. I think it's Roderick and Stephen North right in front of him, and this is a bit of positioning which, under some circumstances, I would be doubtful about, because I tend to be hesitant in putting part of a cage where it can be blocked rather than blitzed, because then you can block a guy out of the way and then you can use the blitz on the actual ball carrier. But here it's wood elves and I've got like my whole team there, so I think it's relatively safe. Relatively. As we see, okay, he needs to re-roll the leap, but... oh, look at that! I don't have an option that lets me hold on to the ball, so I will choose to be pushed. The ball is, probably still safe. It is in 7 of my tackle zones. He's not going to pick it up on anything less than a 6. But I will have to pick it up again myself. And so this is why you can never feel safe against wood elves. Because they can just do that. And this is why, a lot of my play through this match is, well, I'm not really making myself safe and secure against the threat of Ward Dancer incursion. I'm just, in general, trying to set it up so that if this does happen, he probably can't get the ball out of it, so I'll be able to pick it up again. And all this while, as I said, trying to slowly advance up the pitch. Very slowly. But not so slowly that I don't make it to the end zone. To have enough movement to keep changing your mind, it's always nice. Now, I feel like he's about to fail a dodge. I think I remember that. I mean, yeah, like, at this point I was kind of thinking, I want to... oh no, it must be a subsequent turn. Basically, yep, that is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I want to... I'm pretty sure I'm thinking I want to target Jamie. At this point and try and send my guys forward to the left. Well, I suppose I could go for Gideon. That would also work. No, it is Jamie. Martin is just there to be bitten if necessary. But it's not actually working out that well for me, because since I got both down and didn't cause an injury, he's in the way. His prone body is in the way of where I want to be going. So there's still stuff I can do, but not as much. Whereas if I had got defender down or defender stumbles, then he would be like one square up from where I've just put Sir Conrad, and there would be a line that I could move guys through. Now, like, there would be a line I could move guys through without needing to make any dodge rolls. Now, there isn't, because the prone elf is in one of the squares that would be part of that line. Which means I'm obviously much less confident moving lots of guys through it. I'm probably going to send Sir Jasper through because he has dodge. Yeah, and yes, and of course this is what I was saying before about potentially splitting up and having scoring threats in more than one place, and also, for that matter, having multiple angles of attack against the elven defences. That's more what Sir Jasper's doing there. He is obviously a scoring threat, but the main reason he's there is to kind of come around behind these elves that are standing in front of me. Make it more difficult for them to manoeuvre, and possibly hit them from behind. It's mostly to get in the way, so, as I say, it's more difficult for them to manoeuvre. Now, it's occurring to me in retrospect that that was kind of risky. I should have had Richard pick up the ball before I moved Gideon. Because if Richard had failed to pick up the ball there, it could have scattered somewhere less favourable. And then Ardent could have just picked it up, thrown it down the pitch to the catcher and scored. But it turned out alright, and I still have this full cage here. Lag. I look forward to when I get to my more recent videos recorded on my newer laptop, which therefore have less lag, possibly no lag, and I think slightly better video quality. But regardless, I'm fairly confident that he is going to leap Ardent in to blitz the ball carrier again. I don't remember from which direction he does it, but I'm pretty sure he does it. This is one reason why I got Richard Dauntless to pick up the ball again rather than Sir Jasper, because Richard Dauntless has sure hands and is therefore immune to strip ball. Although, of course, there is the factor that with assists cancelled out, Richard is equal strength to Ardent, whereas Sir Jasper is stronger, so... Okay, but it looks like he didn't cancel the assist anyway. Yeah, like, if he had moved Gideon up to cancel out the assists from Sir Mervyn, and that's confusing. He has a Gideon and I have a Gideon crawl. If he had moved Gideon to cancel out the assists from Sir Mervyn and Gideon crawl, then he would have had 1 dice rather than 2 dice, my choice there, which might have worked out better for him. But on the other hand, there'll be only 2 options which would cause me to let go of the ball, whereas with Sir Jasper there were pushes, so it was more just he couldn't get as favourable blocks. And now, particularly as it's getting relatively late in the half, now is the time when I'm going to hand off the ball to Sir Jasper and have him move up the pitch, particularly since our War Dancer is on the floor, and I was comparing movement ranges to check where to send Cat before moving Sir Jasper in case he fails his bloodlust. And yes, it turns out that he does. But I'm not entirely sure why I tried that first square experimentally like that, because I was going to do the same thing regardless. But, yep, I think Gideon may have been the only elf who could have reached Sir Jasper. And I think he possibly still can, though, he'll need to... Yeah, he'll need to get past this. And then it would be unfavourable. Yeah, Yorick with a dodge and 2 going for it could manage to put a tackle zone on Sir Jasper. That's it. Of course, I forgot about Matthew Baker, that's the name of my thrall, and the elf catcher in my backfield. But yeah, so this is kind of good. This is, well, obviously this is pretty good for me. Essentially, it's pretty good for me that I'm more or less safe this turn, which, as I say, is good because then if I score next turn, he will only have 1 turn left, which is not enough for him to score. And yeah, he does make the dodge and 2 going for it to put the tackle zone on. And yes, making sure to move his War Dancer before doing anything too risky. Oh, I did remember to move Matthew Baker, and I just forgot because that turn was so long. Then moving Quintus back for better passing range, obviously good. I'm checking assorted ranges. The one problem for me is that Cat is stunned, which means that I have to either delay another turn or risk not being able to score if Sir Jasper fails his Bloodlust. I think I score next turn, but after taking a load of precautions, of course. Standard anti-war answer measures. Is he doing something? Oh, there was a guy there. I did not remember that there was a guy there. Yeah, it's slightly problematic that he maybe okay, and now this is kind of favourable to me, to be honest. Like I would have, like, I would have moved Gideon away from Sir Mervyn or just left him there. I would not have taken that block because, I mean, obviously WrestleMenti was relatively safe, but the thing is, Sir Mervyn can stand up and move 3 squares this turn, which means like I'm still getting a reasonable deal out of this, and it means that I don't have to worry about spending an action on hitting Gideon or risking a dodge roll. So yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, so anti-war answer measures to start with. Because even though I have 2 guys standing right next to my ball carrier, War Dancer is still the one I'm worried about. There's also the fact that it's difficult for me to get people up to those guys next to my ball carrier. And there we go. I didn't fail Bloodlust, which of course made all those previous moves superfluous, but better safe than sorry. If I had failed Bloodlust, then I had the Thrall there to bite, and there was other stuff that I could have sorted out. I don't necessarily remember what all of it was, but I could have put some. I could at least try to put some further protection in place. And this shouldn't take a lot of thought on my part. Oh yeah, moving Cat onto the front line, because I believe Cat has movement down already. Yes, so makes more sense to have the Thrall with the movement down further forwards. Not that that's particularly relevant at this point, because there's only 1 more turn in the half, but in future it's better to have the Thrall with the movement down further forwards so it's easier to get them, forwards rather than further back where they'll be lagging behind. Yeah, so obviously, as I was saying, at some point, this is good for me. I'm 1-0 up from having kicked this half. Still don't feel safe. I mean, at this particular moment I feel safe, because I know that unless there's a riot, he doesn't have enough time to score an equalising touchdown this half. But for the match in general, I do not feel safe yet. Because, sure, next half I will be receiving, but he still has a war dancer. That's always the deciding factor. Until that war dancer is off the pitch, or I am 2 touchdowns ahead, I do not feel safe. I don't think there's anything really to say about these couple of turns. I suppose I could even speed them up in the video when I come to edit it. I might consider doing that. I would have run up Ardent and made the pass first, because that's start player points. But obviously, it's also good to move his guys away from the front line where I can hit them. So now, yeah, I'm still going to have a blitz to try and get star player points, but that's all. One star player point for Ardent. And that's probably the end of his turn. And he's made a pretty little pattern with his team. I don't think I noticed that at the time. So here we go, blitz. Knock down, don't fall up, doesn't matter. No casualty, end of turn, end of half. All I wanted was some star player points, and I suppose also it would have been nice if I could have taken out one more of his team to have a bigger numbers advantage going forwards. What is numbers advantage? Looks like he has 9 players. I probably should have been looking at the dice log, since it will have said how many players he had on the pitch. But I think he has 9, whereas I can still field a full 11. Okay, yes. 9 players on the pitch, yes. I counted correctly. Maths degree serving me well. So it looks like I might be targeting that war dancer with Sir Mervyn, since he has tackle. Makes sense. I mean, it's always a potential toss-up. Like, do you focus on the players that you consider more of a threat to you? despite the fact that they're possibly more difficult to knock over, or do you focus on the ones that are easier to knock over to just go for a numbers advantage, quantity over quality? And, well, obviously it varies depending on the circumstances. But under these circumstances, obviously I would rather not have to worry about the war dancer than have a numbers advantage. Like, hell, I would probably take a numbers, especially at this point where I'm receiving. I would probably be happy to have like a numbers disadvantage if he just didn't have any war dancers. I feel like that would work out reasonably for me. Evidently my mouse was being weird. So, quick snap, move everyone forwards. Blah blah blah. Standard. Of course, it is potentially very nice for a vampire team that obviously when you get a quick snap, your vampires obviously don't need to roll bloodlust to move the one square. I mean, it'd be kind of ridiculous if they did, but it's still, it feels nice. And just sometimes that one square can be fairly significant, so then it's really nice that you can just make that tiny adjustment to your positioning. Yes. How to score 2 casualties with 1 block. Actually, I suppose that's already possible if you get both down and neither player has block. But yes, regardless. Regardless, as I said, the Murderhobos have had some fairly bad luck in their time with players dying or getting permanent injuries and needing to be fired subsequently. I mean, at present, at the time that I'm recording this, in the Legacy League, I believe they have only 10 players on their roster. And that's after a season and a little bit and a few more matches. It's just that they've suffered so many casualties. It's a bit ridiculous, and I feel kind of sorry for them. But obviously not sorry enough to go easy on them not hit guys. And I mean, despite the problems with the injuries and the fact that at this point they were just consistently losing their matches, they still managed to do pretty well. So I recall, they started in the league by losing pretty much all their matches, and then at some point in the second half of the season, suddenly went on a massive winning streak and ended in the middle of the table. So maybe it was just a few skills made all the difference. Interesting. Looking at it now, I think it might have been a better idea to fully cage up. I mean, it's not likely that he'll just dodge an elf straight through and blitz switch and Dauntless. But it's still possible. Okay, so obviously he's not doing that. He's blitzing with his War Dancer and it's not doing anything. Also, I suppose the kick went to the left-hand side of the pitch as I look at it, but even if it hadn't, I probably would have headed that way because it's further away from the War Dancer. If it wasn't a big enough giveaway that I mentioned it outright, you may be noticing a theme. The War Dancer is all I'm really bothered about. Which is not to sell the other players short, but War Dancers are so good. I mean, yeah, I was just thinking, of course, under a lot of circumstances I would try to move the ball up the middle to keep my options open as to which direction I wanted to go, and I may have been partly avoiding the War Dancer, but it's also actually partly that in the middle he might have had better chances of just dodging someone through to blitz. Because all the elves can do the crazy dodges, and obviously you can make blocks and blitzes unfavourable, but it's still dice rolls. It's still random. Things can still always go wrong, and certainly with an elf team, if you take enough chances, at some point there's a decent chance that one of them will pay off. So, once again, War Dancer focus. Once again, lag. I actually reroll this. This is how much I hate War Dancers. I don't hate War Dancers. I love them if I'm playing with elves myself. Not that I do that very often. I suppose this is where things would have been different if he had used his Apothecary on his other War Dancer back in turn 3 of the first half. Because he would have had 2 War Dancers, and I can't blitz both of them. So then I guess I might still have tried to just focus one of them so that I had one less to worry about, but on the other hand, that's a point where I might have considered going for the numbers advantage, avoid the War Dancers and just try to get rid of the other players and be really secure. Bit of failed hypnotism though. And yeah, all these diagonal lines unfolding. I mean, it makes sense because it's just littering tackle zones around the place, and I kind of do want to keep holding my guys together. Now, see, this is interesting. He's committed 2 of his guys over here to getting a favourable blitz on Sir Mervyn, which, okay, it's worked out for him after a reroll, but I don't know, maybe he was just as anxious to get his War Dancer back into the fight as I was to getting out of it. Are war dancers women? I never remember for sure. But on the other hand, that means that I have a general numbers advantage, but I also now have a severe localized numbers advantage, because he's got 3 of his players over on the right there to 2 of mine, which means he only has 5 over where the ball is, which should make it a lot easier for me to try and move forwards. Even if he does manage to just start the vampire. Yes, of course, blitzing with Thrall. Kind of significant because, of course, Thralls don't need to roll them Bloodlust. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this. It might be up the sideline, which might be a mistake. It's one of these things which just look kind of tempting, but then tends to turn out to be a mistake. Yep, it looks like that's what I'm doing, and I think this is one of the instances which has led me to the feeling that generally it's a mistake. Because while obviously it can get me further up the pitch, like, even leaving aside the fact that sometimes there are possibilities for some chain pushes to just get the ball carrier into the crowd, it's so much less area for the defence to cover. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you potentially want to bring the ball up the middle, because then you can go in either direction and it's more ground for them to cover. If you go to one side, there's still a decent amount of ground to cover. If you go right onto the sideline, there's very little ground to cover. Even if you only have 5 players around, you can probably cover the sideline. And so, like, I've found a couple of times with this team that trying to advance the ball further at the expense of putting it on the sideline generally led to me having to then move it backwards again to get out of the trap I'd walked into. Like, not suggesting that it was a deliberate trap on my opponent's parts to try and force me into that, but I mean, in some ways that makes it worse, where it's like I've ended up just trapping myself willfully. And see, because of course from there were only 2 squares that Richard Dauntless had potentially available to him. Now they're filled up with a prone thrall who is unlikely to be dodging away from that, and an elf that I'm not necessarily in the best position to hit. Actually, I'm in a reasonable position to hit him. I just need to cancel out an assist, and it's 2 dice. But then, like, once I've done that, where is the ball going to go? And in the meantime, while I'm faffing about trying to get myself back off the sideline, the elves are catching up. And look, there's that war dancer. I mean, right now, if my turn if I just skipped my turn and he had another one, which obviously is not going to happen, but if it did, he could leap in and push Richard Dauntless into the crowd. 1 dice, but the chances are reasonable. Of the 6 results on a blog dice, 4 of them involve pushing someone. But okay, so my numbers advantage is still getting bigger. That's something at least. And like I said, I can get that. But like I mentioned, I have this problem where the squares that I really want to move forward into are occupied. So I'm just sort of stuck figuratively treading water here for a turn or two, unless I backtrack a bit, take Richard Dauntless off the sidelines so that I have more options, and I'm pretty sure that's what I'm about to do. And yes, of course, remember to move these guys. Very important. Don't just leave players sitting around, or well, lying around, doing nothing. That may be it. Yeah, see? So, the follow-up to me putting my ball carrier on the sidelines is that he moved backwards a square the following turn. This is why putting your ball carrier on the sidelines is rarely a good idea. So now, looking at it from the Wood Elves' point of view, it's... I'm not sure if he can get... I don't think he can get even a 1-die split on Richard Dauntless. Well, without making some ridiculous dodge rolls, which is not out of the question for Wood Elves, but... he's probably not going to. On the other hand, although I've moved off the sidelines, I'm still very much to one side, so he has options. And, of course, I have this issue where my sort of front line of defence against the elves is in position to be blocked rather than blitzed, which, as I've mentioned before, is generally a no-no, but I didn't have an option last turn because I put myself on the sidelines and thus made my position bad. I feel like I'm repeating myself a certain amount in this video. The past 5 or 10 minutes, probably not 10, but the past 5 minutes has been don't put your ball carrier on the sidelines, and most of the video has been war dancers are scary. I hope I'm not boring you, but those points are both fairly significant. At least, well, the one about the sidelines is very significant. The one about war dancers is very significant if you are playing against Wood Elves, or as Wood Elves. It's always good to know the value of your own players. On the plus side for me in this situation, the numbers advantage is taking its toll. So his defences may not be as solid as they have been in the past. On the other hand, like, if all of his players were interchangeable, then at this point, to try and advance the ball, the one I would want to go for would be Ardent. However, I don't necessarily want to go for Ardent because he is a war dancer and therefore more difficult to knock over, which obviously is good play by him in choosing to put Ardent there rather than someone else. It looks like I'm still going for it. Oh no, I am. Yeah, see, this is the thing. Under other circumstances, I probably, like, if Ardent had been aligned, if Dane and Ardent had been the other way around, then I probably would have still gone for Dane, gone down the middle. Whereas this way, this obviously still works, but it's slightly more roundabout, and I won't be moving forwards as much. And I have to sort of go to, or I can't necessarily form up a standard cage. Instead, I have to go around doing all this sort of stuff. Bloodlust is going to make it difficult. I have to do all this sort of stuff to surround the war dancer because he is going to be the problem. Yes. General principle relevant to what just happened. If you're forming a cage and you want one of the parts of it to be a player with a nega trait, move them early, because if the nega trait goes off, then you may have to change your plans. And at this point I figure I have 3 hit rolls left for 4 turns, so I may as well use one. And it doesn't work anyway. I mean, you look at this now. If he wants a 1-die split on the ball carrier, he can get it with a leap and a dodge. Can leap to 1 square down from Richard Dauntless, and then dodge out, and then come back and blitz him 1 dice. I mean, you know, there are only 2 results on that 1 dice, so there's a 1 in 3 chance of knocking him over and thus knocking the ball loose. And then the ball will land in some of my tackle zones, but he could do it. And it would, if I did lose the ball, it would then cause problems for me. Is he going to do it? I don't remember, as I've said many times, what happens in this match. Yep, looks like he's doing it. Although, yeah, he just cancelled the assist rather than adding in the dodge. against the skull, and then a push, and I have sure hands. On the other hand, like, I don't want to harp on it too much, and I don't want to say that every problem I've had has stemmed from me putting a guy on the sideline that one time, but it kind of feels like that. Because, I put my ball carrier on the sidelines, and then I got stuck, so he had to move back a square, and then I had to kind of circle around, but be in a less secure position. And now here we are, and I've still got the ball. It's still a manageable position, although it's one of those positions which looks kind of horrible and unmanageable, but really it's manageable if you take it one step at a time, which is the thing. You can't. There's no one thing I can do to solve the problems I'm currently facing. I have to do lots of little things. Man, these casualties. But still, like, even though I can deal with this, like, my ball carrier has elves on all sides. Thank Nuffle for tackle. The war dancer goes down, and now I have to this complicated debate as to whether I want to follow up, which is all dependent on where I want the ball carrier to go, and yeah. Now this turn 14. This is when I feel safe. Yes. Yeah, I definitely had decent luck with block dice. Yeah. As I said, turn 14, this is when I feel... Well, once I've managed to move the ball to somewhere a bit more secure, this is when I will actually feel safe. He has 4 players on the pitch. Before that blitz, he had 5. Usually, I think I still have my full 11. Usually 11 versus 5, I'd feel pretty safe regardless. But not in this instance, because in this instance they're elves. Now I feel safe because there is no longer a war dancer on the pitch, and I can just form up a cage and it should be secure. And so this is my point. You can never count out elves, especially wood elves, because war dancers. And also, of course, it was my other point that the stats don't tell the whole story. I'm going to have a convincing scoreline in my favour, but I mean, obviously, I've had some decent luck with block dice and casualties, and if I had messed up at a few different points, quite a few different points in this match, I could have left myself open to losing, potentially, because I could have just left him a tight little gap, and then, before you know it, he's picked up the ball and thrown it down the field. Like if this turn had somehow gone wrong, then, maybe the following turn, the following turn, and this turn, if he still had a war dancer, I mean, actually, you look at the position now. If he still had a war dancer, maybe he could just blitz me ball carrier, knock the ball loose, pick it up, throw it down the field, and score. And then it'd be 1-1, with me having 2 turns left to score, which I can do, but it's not necessarily overly easy. So, this is my point. Like, turn 14 of 16, the result was not definite. I may have been in control sort of throughout, but at any point something could have gone wrong. And then it could have been totally different. I mean, particularly actually, if last turn he had taken the ball and scored, so I then had 2 turns left to score again. Sure, I can do that, but of course then I would be going for a quick touchdown. I might not be playing in the most secure fashion. I might leave myself open to having the ball taken away by elves a bit more easily. And so then, it could have happened. Like, he could have then gotten the ball and made the 2-turn touchdown. To win 2-1. Even with as few players as he has, it's I mean, that's maybe not likely, because it's obviously going to be difficult facing the numbers advantage, but it's possible, and elves are the kings of doing the highly improbable but still slightly possible. So, despite how one-sided this game might look on paper, it was a fairly nerve-wracking affair for me at the time, and I have to give credit where it's due to Froish for making it difficult for me throughout. Now I try to reassemble my overly complex formation. Well, I don't know if it was overly complex, but it was complex. And then I decided to do something different. Oh yeah, I guess... Yeah, I suppose I really could have gone for a totally different formation at this point. Just in light of his limited number of players. But in fact, all I do is the only real change I make is moving the wide zone vampires up to the front line. And so yes, like I said, I finally felt safe once I had a reasonably secure position with the war dancer off the pitch. And now I'm 2-0 up. So even if there were more turns, if he scored it wouldn't. I would still be winning. Is basically the point. Which is why now this is the point at which I can feel safe. And I've only reached it at almost the end of the game. Now there's a riot. You may have noted, of course, Frosh said in the chat, it's just been a really bad couple of games. This one's going to end 3-0. P. It actually is going to end 3-0. Thanks to that riot. Which is a bit ridiculous, must be said. Like, this is the point, even though the war dancer has returned to the pitch, this is the point where the match feels one-sided. But, for all that I had most of the ball possession, it didn't feel entirely one-sided to me for the rest of it. For all the reasons that I've been saying over and over again. Yes, and then he runs back with the ball. I don't know, if I had been in his position, I would have obviously wanted that consolation touchdown. So I think I would have had Torque hold onto the ball and hang back out of blitzing range, and then sent Quintus and probably someone else up the pitch to be scoring threats, to be passed to. Now, yeah. I mean, you may know, even though I've told you that I am going to score another touchdown. I'm not, going straight for it, because I really didn't think it was very likely to work out for me. I mean, I figured I may as well try, but I wasn't overly optimistic. Yeah, of course. I figured, well, I may as well re-roll the Hypnotic Gaze to make this work. If the Hypnotic Gaze had failed, then I would have blitzed someone else. Rather than the ball carrier, I probably would have blitzed Gideon to get a guy next to the ball carrier. But as it is, since I got the Hypnotic Gaze to work, that was obviously the easier option. And now it's just a matter of moving up, all my guys. well, most of my guys. I'm still being a bit cautious here, like, because there's still the potential that, you know, he could pick up the ball and throw it to Arnd, and Arnd could just run down the pitch, which, you know, would not, it wouldn't hugely bother me, because I have won the match anyway. But still, I would like to give myself as much chance as possible of scoring, and I did not expect that to work. And I don't even have a reroll at this point. I mean, I know, like, the odds of rolling 3 2 pluses and 2 4 pluses, not in quite that order. The odds are not that unreasonable, but I still didn't really expect it. Like, now my luck is just being ridiculous at me. Like, really? These are the dice that I am rolling. Like I said, this is where it feels one-sided. He doesn't have the players to deal with it, and I am rolling all the right dice. And so there's not much more to say about the end of the game. I do just want to reiterate for the 20th time that the scoreline, the stats don't tell everything. What looks like a one-sided match on paper didn't feel too one-sided at the time until the last 2 turns, even with like masses of advantages going my way. A good team played well with a bunch of handy skills always has potential to make a difference. That I think was me being confused, because he managed to unhypnotize that line elf without actually getting him to do anything, which, well, I knew it was possible according to the rules, because I know the rules, but up to this point I didn't think it was possible to do it in the video game version of the game. I knew that it should be, but I didn't think there was actually a way in the cyanide framework to actually make it work. I have since learned that, yeah, you can do it. All you do is select the player and then essentially click as if you are getting them to move to the square that they're already in, and that does it. The player will stop being hypnotized but not actually do anything, which is good, especially for situations like that where he didn't want Mordecai to do anything. Because anything he could have done would have involved a crazy dodge that he might have failed. He just wanted him to not be hypnotized anymore and to have a tackle zone. And yeah, obviously, he scored a touchdown. So, I'm sure I said it at the time, but sincere apologies to Frosh for the number I did on his team. I had forgotten how many casualties there were in that game. I remembered the scoreline, not the casualties. But I do have to congratulate him on that. Playing well despite that, and for keeping going, for that matter. A lot of people suffering that many casualties would have just quit the match, but he kept trying. And as I've said a bunch of times, he kept trying to the point where I still felt like there was a chance of him pulling it back until the last couple of turns. So now, final pointless turn, he's going to presumably throw a pass, maybe hit a guy, try to get some star player points. Oh, right, he fails to pick up the ball. End of the match. And yeah, that is the end of the match. So, I'd be interested to hear anyone else's thoughts on that. Did the rest of you feel that it was actually as one-sided as the scoreline makes it look? Or do you agree with me that it was not so unreasonable? Regardless, I hope you found it maybe a bit interesting. The next game I'm doing a video of, I can't remember, but it might be less one-sided. I don't know. I might also just pick out certain